In this video, we're going to go through the Insta360 Go Ultra and take a look at all the different features that's packed into this tiny little camera. This camera is lightweight at 53 grams. It could shoot 4K 60 frames per second, has a magnetic mount that allows you to put it anywhere, has low light capabilities, active HDR, waterproof up to 33 feet, 360 horizon lock stabilization, fast charging, and is super tiny for an action camera. So I've had the Go Ultra for a few weeks now, and I've used it to film a bunch of different videos. I went to the Sequoia National Park with my family, did some camping, explored a river around there, played with it in the water. Then I took it out to Utah when I was working on my anti-gravity video, shot all of my behind the scenes and also just a lot of additional content when I was making that video, and also took it through Zion National Park and shot some footage while I was in the park just exploring. So I have a ton of footage that I'm going to be showing you alongside talking about all the different features that are in this tiny little action camera. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Now I just want to say a special thanks to Insta360 for sponsoring this video. All right, so the first thing that I want to go over is just the design of this camera, because this is the Go series of cameras, which means that you can pull the camera out of the action pod and you have this tiny camera that you can pretty much mount anywhere. I have the under the shirt test harness right here so that at any point you could just slap this on and it's magnetic, pull it on and off. And I actually use this a lot because there were times where I just wanted to get a shot and I didn't have to worry about mounting this camera anywhere or like hold it. So I would just throw it right here on my chest. I would show you, but right now I'm using the Insta360 Air microphone to record all the audio for this video. So it would basically go right here. Now, the other ways that I use this camera is that I mounted using the different prong system. So I mounted it up on my dashboard to get shots outside of my car. I mounted it on my windshield with a suction cup mount so I could film myself in the car. I also brought along a bunch of different attachments, like these different bar attachments and the carbon fiber selfie stick. And these are what I used to mount to the Razor, to the different motorcycles I was playing around with. And then the last is I had this tripod vlog mount, which turns into a little tripod. So I could set this down anywhere. And also it becomes a selfie stick. So I used all of these different mounts in different ways to be able to put this camera in different places, whether it was attached to different objects like vehicles, attached to myself. And a lot of times I just held the camera like this. So I would just hold the camera, either the camera itself, or I would throw it in the action pod and be able to hold it and flip the screen up to be able to see myself. That's one of the coolest things about this camera is that you have the standalone little camera, which is perfect for small mounting places. It's lightweight. It's only 53 grams. And on the actual camera itself, you have the magnetic mount, which mounts to all different things. But when you throw it in the action pod, this becomes more of your like standard action camera style camera. However, there's a few things about the Go Ultra that make it really easy to use. One is that you have this little finger grip in the front. I know it doesn't feel like much, but you got this rubber grip so that when you hold this, it actually feels like you're not going to drop the camera, because I was using this camera as a normal camera. I wasn't just using it for action scenes. So there were times where I'd be filming my buddy walking out onto the cliffs and I'd want to hold this like I would hold a normal camera. And the cool thing is the screen flips up and over. Now, this isn't new. Other Insta360 cameras have this, but with this grip and working with this action pod, oftentimes I would have the screen flat so I could look down at the camera and I'd be holding with this little grip and it would just make it feel like I'm working with a bigger camera. Obviously, this is an action camera. It's tiny. Like this thing weighs nothing, but with all this stabilization packed into it, and these different little features like the flip up to tilty screen, it makes it so that you can actually use this more than just an action camera. Now let's talk about the sensor that is in this camera. So it's a 1 1/2 inch sensor with an AI processor, and it's actually the same sensor that you find in the Ace Pro 2. That's one of the massive advantages with this camera over the other Go cameras in the lineup. This now has the same sensor that you're going to find in bigger action cameras. And that was always a problem with this Go lineup of cameras. I've worked with the original Go, I've worked with the Go 2, and one of the things you always had to sacrifice was image quality over the bigger action cameras in Insta360's lineup. However, with the Insta360 Go Ultra, you now have an awesome sensor. And this has great low light performance. And with this camera, you could shoot up to 4K 60 frames per second. And on top of that, you also have active HDR, which a lot of the footage that you're gonna see in this video was shot with the active HDR turned on. And the reason for that is that working with this kind of camera, this small form factor action style camera, a lot of times what you want is just a good shot. You just wanna put this camera, mount it somewhere, know that you're gonna get good footage and not have to worry so much about all the settings. Now, you can clearly set up every setting in this. You can go full manual, you can completely adjust it, customize it, but when you just leave it on auto, throw on the HDR, in most settings, you just get a great looking image and it's exposed properly. You could see in the car here, I just had 4K 30 HDR turned on. Footage looks great. You go outside shooting with these cliffs and these different landscapes, 4K 30 HDR on, and you get an awesome looking shot. The biggest thing is simplicity, is making content easier to produce. And so when you're working with an action camera, oftentimes it's just you want to get a good image out of camera. And that's one really big advantage of working with the Go Ultra is that you have this ability to just throw this camera in different places and know that you're going to be able to get good footage because everything's going to be exposed properly, especially when you turn on that HDR. But let me just show you a difference of what it looks like between the HDR on and the HDR off. Okay, so this is with the HDR off and mixed lighting. Let's go over here to the shade. See how that looks. HDR off. All right, this is with the HDR on. We'll go back out into the sun with the bright exposure. So I mentioned low light capabilities. So in this camera, you have pure video mode, which allows you to see more in darker situations. So when I was camping with my family, we were in this campsite that was all Airstreams. I walked around at night and you could see the kind of footage I was able to get just hand holding this camera, walking around with the ambient light that was in this location. And something else that's pretty cool is that there's a star time-lapse feature. Now, one of the nights that I was camping when I was out shooting with the anti-gravity drone, I stuck this camera outside my Jeep and just let it run. And I let it go all night. And what's crazy is that you could see the moon actually light up all of the trees, and then it goes super dark when the moon sets, but you could still see the stars moving across the sky. And so if you are in a lower light situation, or you want to create time lapses at night, you can do it with this camera. And so let's dive into some of the other modes that you have access to. So everything is a swipe on the screen. You have a couple buttons on the side here, allow you to go into like quick menus, a big record button on the top, but most of everything is done through swipes on the camera itself. If you swipe anywhere left or right on the screen, it pulls up the menu of the different shooting options. So you have photo, you have video, you have pure video, which is that night filmmaking, you have free frame mode, which I'll explain in a second. You have Toddler Titan. You have time shift, which is like a hyperlapse mode. You have time lapse. You have loop recording, so it's just continuously recording. You have slow motion. You have star lapse, burst photo, and interval photo. So there's a lot of different modes to be able to control what you want to do with this camera. Most of the time, I was filming in just video mode, but there were times where I bumped it over to free frame mode. So basically records the entire sensor. And then in the Insta360 software, you could go through and frame up your shot. So if you are shooting both horizontal and vertical, what's pretty cool is you could put guides on the free frame mode that shows both your horizontal and vertical frames. This way, if you're shooting for both, you'll be able to know what you're getting on the screen, and you could go through and edit this later. So essentially you're getting the full sensor, and then you crop in the 16:9 or 9:16 when you get into the editing software. It just gives you a lot more flexibility to work with this footage. Now for slow motion, you have 2.7K up to 120 frames per second, and you have 1080p up to 240 frames per second. So if you do want to do some slow motion, that is available. However, if you want to shoot slow motion 4K, you could go up to 4K 60. And you can see when I was in the water, I was doing some 4K 60 shots where I'd start low underneath in the river and then come up to reveal the scene that I'm at. And this camera is waterproof up to 33 feet. So when you take it out of the action pod, this camera can go underwater. It can be submerged, and you can use this in a lot of different settings. And it actually works pretty well. I was just carrying this around in the river, playing around with my daughter. We were shooting a bunch of stuff floating down the river. And I was able to just like handhold this camera, get some interesting shots. And it made it really easy to kind of capture whatever we were doing. Now, quick side note, I just want to mention that when I was shooting this underwater footage, I wasn't using the aqua lens that Insta360 has developed for the Go Ultra. This is going to make the footage much more clear underwater, much more sharp. So you can see on screen, here's some footage that Insta360 shared with me that shows you the kind of footage you can get underwater when you use this little aqua lens attachment. Lens is replaceable, so you just unscrew the standard lens and screw on the aqua lens, and you get better footage underwater. Now on the photo side, you could shoot up to 50 megapixels with this camera. So here is a bunch of photos that I took using the Go Ultra in a few different settings, and you get a ton of resolution and you get that super wide lens for a really interesting perspective on your photos. Now on the camera itself, there's a few things that I want to show you. On the front, you have a little microphone. So I've been doing some walk and talks where I just hold the camera out like this, not even with the action pod. I took this camera out in the trails behind my house, was filming, walking around like this. I got some great footage and it actually sounds really good. You can see ocean way out there in the distance. You can see the mountains over there. Like, it doesn't really get better than this. If there's not a lot of ambient sound around, the microphone on this camera actually sounds pretty solid. Now there is a wind reduction mode, so if you do have heavy wind, it will help cut out that wind and do some processing in camera to make it sound better. But overall, the audio on this camera actually sounds pretty good right out of camera without having to do a lot of extra. Now, one thing that's cool is this Insta360 Air can connect to this camera wirelessly. So a lot of the footage that I was shooting when I was out in Utah working with the anti-gravity drone, I was actually using the Air for all of my audio. And I created an entire vlog from that experience, going out, testing a new drone, playing around with the Go Ultra, and kind of all the challenges that come with testing a new drone. And that whole video is shot using the Go Ultra and the Air. And so this camera can be the only camera you use because of all the different ways that you can mount it and use it and be able to capture both audio and video and make it sound really clean. It will actually work pretty well. Now, the Go Ultra, when you have it as a standalone, you just have a button here. You can click it in different ways. It takes a photo, it starts and stops recording. But also, you have a card door right here on the camera. So you have replaceable media on the Go Ultra. That way, you never run out of media on the camera. This is huge because when you're working with older Go cameras, you only had internal media. You didn't have replaceable media. So this is a huge advantage with the Go Ultra. Also, when you have it as a standalone like this, and you have the action pod, well, the action pod becomes a wireless screen and it turns on immediately when you take it out from the camera. So you could just move around and the screen is tethered wirelessly. And this is a Bluetooth connection. So when you put it back in, it's synced back up, pop it out, now it's wireless. This is super cool because there was a lot of different ways I was mounting the camera around the Razor, and then I would use the action pod and I would sit there and look at, make sure the shot looks good and start and stop the recording where we're actually driving on the trails. So this becomes a super useful tool to be able to mount this camera in different ways, be able to see what you're doing and control the camera from the action pod. It just becomes a more seamless experience when you're mounting and changing the camera in different ways. And that's one of the coolest things with this camera is that you can go from mounted in the car to mounted outside of the car to vlog mode to, on your chest doing something. And it's all very seamless and it just works super well to be able to mount in different ways and move around. While at the same time, knowing that you're not sacrificing image quality to be able to use a camera like this and have this small camera that can be mounted in all these different places. Now, in terms of stabilization, that's one place where the Go Ultra really shines because you have different levels of stabilization when you're filming. You could do low, standard, or high. And what's crazy is that this camera could be bouncing all around and it still looks super stable. So I was filming with some electric motorcycles riding through like these crazy trails where just rocks everywhere, just bah, 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 bah. And the camera itself, when you look at the horizon out in the distance, it's pretty stable. Like I just had this on a pole pretty far out to get this kind of shot of me riding. And you could see me bouncing all over the place. And that's because the motorcycle's like, whoa, all over. And the camera's staying very stable. And you see the same thing when we're on the Razor. I have the camera mounted at different places and all of the shots are very stable. I thought some of this footage just wouldn't be usable because the camera was bouncing around so much, but with the high stabilization turned on, you're able to get these shots where the camera moves all over and it still looks great. Now, depending on which mode you're in, you could actually have the tilt, the horizon, stay locked. So when I'm shooting in, say, 4K 30, with the high stabilization turned on, I get about 10 degrees where the camera can rotate back and forth and the horizon won't shift. It'll be completely level. And then there's other modes when you click in that could go 45-degree lock or even a 360-degree lock where you could spin the camera all the way around and the horizon stays completely level. Now, this all changes how much the camera sees, like crops in a little bit when you have more of this horizon lock. And when you're at the full width of the action, it's a 156-degree field of view with the lens that you have on this camera. So you could see a lot with this camera, super wide shot. And you could even see some of these shots when I was out filming. You could see so much with this lens, which is part of the reason why you want to use an action camera like this, is to be able to have this wide field of view, stabilize it, and be able to know that you get good exposure. Now, with this lens, it is replaceable. So you could screw this on and off. You could change it out for ND filters. You could put different filters on here. Or if you just break this lens, you could change it out. Mine's pretty dented up because I hit it a few times. I'll probably need to replace this pretty soon. Now, in terms of battery life, so there is no removable battery on the camera itself or on the action pod. You have to continually charge both of these to be able to keep recording. However, there is a fast charge feature on both the camera and the action pod. So from 0 to 80%, it takes 12 minutes. And when the camera's by itself, it has a runtime of 70 minutes. And when it's paired with the action pod, has a runtime of 200 minutes. And one of the things I was testing when I was out filming was working with this camera without a removable battery. How useful is it for a vlog run and gun style of setup? And what I did is I just kept charging this camera in between shots. So I'd plug it into my car if we were driving somewhere or I had external batteries with me, and I would plug it into the different batteries if I was in between filming or transferring footage or eating lunch or something like that. And I never really had an issue with the battery life on this camera because it does have that 200-minute runtime. There wasn't a situation where I needed to have a replaceable battery. However, depending on how you're actually using this camera, you will have to bring some sort of external battery to be able to charge this when you're out in the field filming. Overall, after working with this camera for a few weeks, the biggest thing that I'm noticing is that it's just easy to work with. You can mount it in different ways. You can pop it in and out of the case, use a bunch of different accessories, be able to film in the different ways that you need to. And you're not having to sacrifice the footage because it's going to be on par with other action cameras on the market. So if you want to see more information about the Insta360 Go Ultra, I'll include a link down below in the description. And next, you should check out this video right here, which goes through the anti-gravity A1 drone, which I filmed all the BTS using this camera. And you could get some pretty wild shots with this 360 drone. So I'll see you over there.